Hello there friends, welcome to my channel. This video is part 2 of my Attack on Titan fan art set. Today I will be painting Mikasa in a stained glass style. In the previous video I painted Eren and I recommend you check it out. I'll be talking about my painting process and how I chose the background and the character and all these little elements of the painting. Let's get into it. I start with a pencil sketch that serves as a guideline for the ink line art. For the line art, I used the 0.1 Sakura Pigma pen. Unlike my previous painting, I decided not to go in with all the details and different thickness pens right away, but rather do everything in the same 0.1 pen. The reason why is that once I'm done with the watercolor part, a lot of the pen will fade anyway or will be concealed under all the layers of pigment, so I'll have to go over it again. And while doing that, I can also add all the details that I will need there anyway. When painting Eren, I already did all these details and I already highlighted some parts with a thicker pen, and later I had to go over it and was just really time consuming and kinda annoying, so I'm trying to avoid that in future works. I'll be painting Mikasa the way she looks in season 4, with her military uniform. I struggled a little bit with deciding which background she should have, but in the end I thought that the best idea is to kind of recall her childhood and the very natural area where she grew up, so I painted trees behind her. Moving on to the next step, coloring, and I start as usual from the background. In this case it's the sky. One thing I find really interesting about the Attack on Titan anime is that the animation and the background and the landscapes are really bright and almost cheerful. Like the blue of the sky is so vibrant and the greens, and it just almost seems like a really happy universe, if you know what I mean. But you know that the show is actually not, that it's really dark and morbid. I think it creates a very interesting, unsettling contrast between the environment and the story. It creates almost a calm before the storm vibe, at least in my opinion, and also even in shots or scenes where something really tragic happens, the weather is good, but it's so unsettling when you really think about it. That's why I chose very warm tones of blue for the sky to recreate this amazing weather. When painting the trees, I didn't want them to be just boring flat colors like this sky. I wanted them to have a little bit texture, so I decided to play around with salt and different shades of green. If you look at real life stained glass windows, you'll notice that not all of them are flat and not all of them are just one color. A lot of windows, especially more modern ones, have a little bit of texture and a little bit of different colors in them. The trees in this painting, similarly to the fire in the painting of Eren, consist of a lot of small elements that all come together to complete the full picture. And painting that was a pretty tedious task, because I wanted them all to be unique. I didn't want all the colors just mix and become this big blob of green. I wanted each panel to be a little different shade. So I had to do the first layer and finish that, wait for it to dry, and then do the next, and the third, and the fourth, and so on until it's all complete. It was like building a puzzle. For the bushes at the bottom of the picture, I decided to go with a gradient, going from a dark, cool tone of green to a warm and light one. I did that because it's a much bigger surface than the trees, and a gradient will just be more visible. The last few layers are a bright yellow like green and a more blue dark tone to give the tree an illusion of depth, even though I still need them to look somewhat flat because that's simply the style I'm going for. My next step is to work on the little triangle shaped panels on the side. In these ones I wanted to have a pattern of red flowers on a white background, and the reason why I chose red flowers is that I always associate them with sadness. Probably it could be just because of some animes I watched, but most likely it's because in many countries, including where I grew up and in Canada, red flowers often accompany Remembrance Day or any just sad event. Here in Canada, Remembrance Day is accompanied with poppies. When I was planning out this project, I wanted each character to kind of have a vibe with them, some association that I personally have with that character. With Eren, it was mostly anger and frustration, but Mikasa gives me more of a sad vibe, like she is grieving something all the time, and that's why I wanted to have the red flowers. And also for a more aesthetic reason, because I needed something in this composition to reflect her red scarf. Though it is a very prominent and almost iconic element of her character design, I thought it would still look a little bit out of place with all the greens around, so I needed another part of the painting to be red to balance it out. My next step after the red flowers is the character Mikasa, and I start with her face. In the anime she is very pale compared to the other characters, and in some scenes she looks almost grey, and her skin resembles like a ghost, which is honestly pretty cool in my opinion. So I had to do, for the first layer, just a very diluted light shade of brown with a little bit of grey in certain areas. I added some very basic shading, still keeping it very flat, but the face is always the most detailed because it is the focus point of the painting. Her military uniform is probably the easiest part of this entire painting because it's just one color for the entire thing. Yet I did struggle a little bit with finding the right color because it's a very particular shade of green that I didn't have, so I had to mix it and experiment. But in the end it turned out very nice. I was afraid a little bit that it will mix with the background and will not be very visible, but it is, as I said, a unique shade of green that I did not paint with yet in this painting, and she does stand out, which is exactly what I need. Thinking about it now, I could have probably added some more elements to her uniform. For example, could have actually painted her legs instead of just making it a very long coat to conceal them. But there's already so much going on in this painting that I think adding more details will just be way too much. Once the coat is dry, I add the second layer of her face and start the red scarf and the red flowers at the bottom of the picture. finish off with the golden halo around her head, using my favorite metallic watercolors. I am very careful to stay within the lines because if I don't, this paint will be really hard to remove, and it probably will be impossible to do so without ruining my entire painting. Even though painting the halo is a little difficult and takes a lot of concentration, it is still my favorite part because it adds such a beautiful element to this painting. It adds a lot of life to it. Once all the watercolor is dry, it is time to go over the line art with a thicker pen and strengthen it. My goal here is to separate the different elements of this painting so they won't get lost and mixed together. Most importantly, I need to separate Mikasa from the background, but also the different elements of the background, so I will go over the trees and the bushes and the red flowers to make them pop out a little more. I also repeat parts of the line art that got lost underneath all the watercolor layers. But luckily for me, in this painting it wasn't as many as the previous one. I didn't talk at all about the circle parts at the top of the painting, and that's because the shape in them, I really cannot explain why it's there without spoiling season 4. I am so sorry. This time for the tracery, which is the black frame around the painting, I use diluted acrylic instead of ink. Acrylic works a little better for this painting because it dries very smoothly and it doesn't reflect the light as much as ink does. Though to be honest, I was really terrified of using it because it is never really liquid and it's a bit harder to work with. And if I mess up, if I go inside the painted part, it's pretty much gone, I can't fix that. So I had to be really careful. That's why I use a relatively small flat brush that is very easy to control, and I started by framing the painted part really carefully not to go inside, and then I paint the rest. To finish off this painting, I use Prismacolor pencils to add any last details and finishing touches, mostly on Mikasa's face to make it stand out. This painting went much more smoothly than the previous one because I already made all my mistakes with Erin and I learned from them, and I'm much more familiar with this style and what technique I should use. I did mess up a little bit, but to be honest, for me, being as clumsy as I am, it's just unavoidable. Just a reminder, I will have 2 more paintings in this set. I also have to paint Armin and Levi, and of course I will release videos of these processes as well. If you want to see the first painting of Erin, you should check out the description below, that's where I will link it. If you like my work, I suggest you subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram, I am most active there, link is in the description. If you wish to support what I do, I also have an Etsy shop with prints and originals, and I'm also on Patreon. Thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, goodbye.